Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale, and with me today is councillor Keith Riel. Keith is running for re-election in Ashburnham Ward in the fall election, and today we're going to be talking about various things, including what the role of a city councillor is.
I don't answer to any party. I don't have to go along party lines. I'm elected by the people of Ashburnham to do their bidding. I'm there to be their voice. And certainly when people stop me on the street, when they email me, when they phone me, when I see them in the grocery store or Tim Hortons or whatever, and they're telling me what their concerns are, I think it's my duty or behooves me to bring their concerns to council.
And we're also going to be talking about housing development by the lift locks and so much more. So, hope you enjoy the show.
I'm Keith Riel. I'm City Councillor for Ashburnham Ward 4. Certainly interested in for the podcast itself, and certainly get my points of view, or people that don't know me, introduce myself to the city, but also the Board of Ashburnham.
Yeah, and right now you're currently seeking re-election in Ashburnham Ward. Is this your second or your third?
This is my second term and hopefully my third.
Okay, yeah. So maybe you can explain a little bit about why you've decided to run again for a third term in Ashburnham.
Well, certainly I think there's things that are left undone, and certainly I have still the desire to want to be the councillor for Ashburnham and certainly move the city forward. Like I said, I think there's work undone, and I want to be a part of that. I don't know if the job will be forever and a day, but right now I'm interested. I think I've got a good foundation for being a councillor. I know where to go and get things done. So hopefully the people in Ashburnham will support me and re-elect me on the 22nd of October.
So what's left undone that you want to see continue and you want to be a part of in a third term?
Well, I think if you look at most of the people, I mean, we've got to get jobs here to Peterborough. And certainly I think that the two councils that I've been on have set the table for that. Certainly the $30 million we spent at the Peterborough Airport, and certainly the Green Text Common that's coming on stream with Trent University, the partnership we have there. But I think we're going to see some growth, and there is some growth right now at the airport, and that could be the growing business for us on the manufacturing side. So there's things that I want to see happen in Ashburnham. Certainly a big problem for us is transportation, how to move people, not just north and south, but east and west across not only the Trent Canal system, but the river, the Otonabee River, into the downtown. So there's a huge issue there, and I'd like to be a part of that, of trying to drive that forward to get that transportation. Also, I'd like to also be the spokesperson again for the environmental side. I think that the lens of the environment should always be on some sort of development we do. I know at times it can be a little costly, but I think at the end it will pay off in spades, certainly for the taxpayer, that if we use that lens of the environment and do it right. Also, another huge issue, certainly the addiction problem in the city of Peterborough. I'd like to be a part of trying to clean that up and certainly help the people that with their addiction problems, and certainly maybe be a driver for a detox and treatment center for the city of Peterborough. I think there's an absolute need here. When you read reports that we're the fourth highest user of opiates in the province, that's kind of a scary thing to really realize that that's happening in our community. But certainly I'd like to be a part of trying to work on helping that. And certainly this term I've been the social services chair, or portfolio has been something that I've been interested in, and certainly the mayor gave me that position. So I'd like to continue the work in that.
Okay. So what are some of the issues facing Ashburnham Ward specifically? You mentioned transportation as one example, but you've mentioned a few things that you want to keep some momentum going. How do those things relate to what's going on in Ashburnham Ward?
Well, I know, certainly if you look at the makeup, we're landlocked where we are, because we have two swing bridges and two one-lane bridges to go across. And certainly there's an absolute need to build some bridges all the way across the whole expanse of Ashburnham, because we have a river. And certainly people want to get to point A to point B in the quickest time they can. And I think there needs to be a transportation plan, look at how we're going to move people in Ashburnham. Also, Ashburnham is a destination spot for a lot of people. We have Beavermead Park, we certainly have the soccer fields, we're going to have the Canoe Museum, we have the iconic lift locks, and then all the amenities up Armour Road, certainly Thomas A. Stewart. When that field opened, that was the #1 FIFA field in North America. You have Trent University, and certainly the amenities we put in there. We're going to build a new arena in Aqua Center, and then Green Tech's Common. So all the combination of that, we have to be able to move traffic. And I just don't see a plan in place. And I think there needs to be that looked at, that lens of how we're going to move people, not only north and south, but east and west.
Yeah, and I know just looking at transportation in Ashburnham Ward, I mean, right now there's also that subdivision too, which has been approved. You personally did not vote in favor of the Ashborough Village subdivision when the draft plan was in front of council a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain why you voted that way.
Well, certainly I think it's the cart before the horse. I am not against the development at that site. But we have a major stormwater management problem right now, and we have a transportation problem. So when you start to put 700 homes in there, and these are my numbers, 1,400 cars again into that area of already a problem that we have, and not have a plan in place, I'm sorry, I want to get like I said, it's kind of the cart before the horse. I want to see a plan of how we're going to move traffic, not just build a subdivision and then go, oh, what are we going to do now? I think there has to be some forethought and looked at what we're going to do. But also, we've had a problem with stormwater management and flooding in that area. And when you're going to build a subdivision and you have this huge stormwater pond there, it's almost the size of a small lake. I think that we have to look at it and certainly help the citizens and the residents of that area with stormwater management.
So there was a public meeting about the Ashborough Village subdivision. Were you at that meeting? Or?
The first one I was at Baker Hill, and then the one I had a family emergency. I had to go to St. Catharines, so I didn't make the first one, but certainly my counterpart, Gary Baldwin, kept me informed, and certainly the people that attended the meeting were good to keep me abreast of what went on, and certainly staff too. It was kind of a mirror image of the first one we had at Baker Hill, and certainly the same things and questions came up, certainly how are you going to move traffic, and certainly stormwater management. So those were front and center again.
So how much did the opinions of those people who lived in that area who were concerned, how much did that weigh on you in your decision to not vote in favor of that draft plan of subdivision?
Well, I guess I'm a little different in the way I think of what a councillor's job is. I don't answer to any party. I don't have to go along party lines. I'm elected by the people of Ashburnham to do their bidding. I'm there to be their voice. And certainly when people stop me on the street, when they email me, when they phone me, when I see them in the grocery store or Tim Hortons or whatever, and they're telling me what their concerns are, I think it's my duty, or behooves me, to bring their concerns to council. Yes, there is business of council that we do every week. And certainly I don't need to be asked the constituents on some of these issues. But when you have something like a subdivision that could impact the whole community, certainly I think that I go out and I try to do my homework and listen to as many people as I can. And like I said, I'm their voice. And I think that's it's a lot different than federal and provincial politics. I answer to the people. And certainly I think that's what I've tried to do for the 8 years that I've been on council. I will continue to do that.
And I've asked this question to a lot of people that I've had in the podcast. That is, if you have two options in front of you for a choice that you need to make on council, let's say city staff recommend option A because option A makes sense to them. It's cost effective. It's what they recommend. And then you have people who are in the crowd who, in the audience at chamber at City Hall, and people at public meetings who say, no, we want option B because that's what we want. What is that balance, and which do you end up leaning more towards? Do you take the advice of city staff? Do you lean more towards the constituents in your ward?
Well, I think both of things are there's no really correct answer. I have the greatest respect for the staff we have. Their job, staff, is to give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. My job is to make a decision. And so therefore, if that is talking to the constituents and listening to the constituents, but also looking at what's proposed in front of me. But I mean, you can always make amendments to you can have a saw off between what staff has said and certainly what the people want. So therefore, you can make an amendment to the motion, and certainly that happens all the time. And but like I said, I have the deepest respect for our staff, but their job is not to give me a skewed report. Their job is to give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. My job is to read that, listen to the constituents, make a decision, and in the betterment certainly for the not only Ashburnham, but the citizens of Peterborough.
And just talking about the public and public engagement as well, a criticism of this council that I've heard specifically is geared towards public engagement and the belief that this council has not properly engaged with the public on a lot of key issues. What do you think of that criticism?
Well, I think there's some validity to it. Certainly some of the hot button items we've had, like certainly the Parkway casino, PDI, all of these things. Certainly, I think that some of the presenters and certainly the people, certainly at Adam Scott when we had the Parkway, people got up and spoke. This is very knowledgeable, very well spoken, and certainly I listen to what they have to say. I can't vouch or say what my councillor or my council mates do, but I certainly listen to them because I think there's a wealth of knowledge there. And certainly, if you just shut yourself off, then you don't get the whole picture of what's going on. So I listen to what they have to say, and like I said, there's some validity to it. But I think I think people have really looked when we have 23 items on an agenda, and 3/4 of them are by consent. This council is working. We have some contentious issue, and rightly so. But I says this council and the council before has moved the city forward. There's shovels in the ground. There's things being done. There's only a finite amount of money that we can do this here with. And certainly people continue, they want their taxes kept at a reasonable level. And I'm a taxpayer the same as anybody else. My job is to try and run a $350 million business and how to spend the taxpayers' money as wisely as I can. And that's a combination of not only listening to staff, but also what the constituents needs and what they want.
Mm-hmm. So how do you improve then public engagement if, you're saying that there is some truth to the criticism that the council doesn't properly engage with the public? How do you improve that?
Well, I think that we've tried to have open meetings and certainly tried to bring people. I think I was disappointed in some of the meetings we did have, and you'd have a corporal's guard show up we've held meetings and certainly had venues and brought in staff. And when you have more staff than you have people that showed up, I mean, how many people are really interested? So, yeah, there's some big items and certainly people show up. But certainly, I'm not opposed to having ward meetings. But I certainly want them to be counterproductive. And I want them to, a number of people to show up and certainly be engaged and certainly tell us what they're thinking. But like I said, when only a corporal's guard show up, it's kind of a wasted night for myself, but also staff that you bring in to bring the expertise that they have to the crowd.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Is that every time I hear or see these town hall meetings, one of the things that I hear from the people who are in them is that turnout is typically not very high. How do you promote an environment where people want to engage and have the time and opportunity to engage their councillors?
I think there's some validity to do that too. I think we've got to promote it better. We have a bit of a fund that we can use to have these town hall meetings, but I think maybe with the new website and what we're doing and trying to engage people and so on social network, maybe we'll be better. Maybe we'll be able to attract more people to come and get people more engaged. I think myself and Councillor Baldwin had a meeting. I think we had 40 or 50 people, and they were engaged. And it was a great meeting. And certainly we had a round table, and we brought some people in. We're going to hold another one on the 19th of September at the Lions Club on the environment. And we're bringing somebody in to present about the environment and what's going on in the environment. So we have a person that's making a presentation for us. And certainly we're hoping to engage as many people as we can on climate change and the environment.
So we've been talking about engaging people in council chambers, but I kind of want to switch over to engaging people in the election. I want to say, what was the turnout in the last election? It was around 50%.
I think it was a little bit below. I'm going to say 47, but I could be wrong. But,
Okay.
But 50, well, say 50%. That's close enough.
Oh yeah, around that area. And you've been knocking on doors and talking to people. Do you get people who just say, "Oh, I don't vote," or "I don't really engage with municipal politics"? And what do you do to try to engage those people?
It's yesterday was the first time I had somebody tell me that they don't vote.
Really?
Of all the people that I've talked to, certainly, and I've been on the campaign trail since July and going door to door, and I've had a good reception, and certainly that's the first time that I had somebody saying, "I don't vote."
What was your response to them?
I just said, I hope you do get out and vote. I wasn't going to get into an argument or discussion with them, and they didn't want to discuss it. They just said, I don't vote, and shut the door. So that's fine. But I mean, other people are engaged. They know what's going on. Some people didn't know there was an election, but they said certainly they will look into it and do their homework, and which is great. And certainly, hopefully, that'll equate to them voting for me. But I just want people to get out and vote. It's their right, and certainly that's why every 4 years we have this we have an election, and certainly people get to voice who they want to be their representative. So it's the democratic process, and that's the one that we live by in Canada. So I hope they get out and vote.
There is no downside to getting out and voting.
Absolutely not.
And that's what weirds me out is that people, I like people to go out and make an educated choice, but just go out and make a choice.
Absolutely.
Please.
Absolutely. You don't want to get, say, people died for our rights and all this stuff, but they did. And I think it's just that this is the democratic process we have. So get out and vote and put your X on the ballot and hopefully that's we elect the people that we have to represent us. So if you don't get out and vote, then how can you criticize?
Yeah, that is true. And you hear that criticism on social media or just through conversations of, oh, you didn't vote, well then you don't get to criticize what happens.
But that's that's their choice, and that's we have a free country and they can choose what they want to do. But I just would sooner them get out and vote. If they're not going to vote for me, I still say to them, get out and vote. Make a choice. So,
all right, Keith, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to dive into a couple of key issues that people care about in the community. So, we'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, perfect. We'll be right back. So we're back on the podcast, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some issues that people care about, including, we were talking about the Ashburnham Village development. Let's transition from that and talk about housing first, because right now we're in a unique housing, well, not a unique housing situation, because a lot of municipalities are dealing with the fact that our housing prices are up. Our rental vacancy rates are down, and people from the Toronto market are looking to move into municipalities like Peterborough and buy houses. So what should we be doing right now to deal with the housing crisis that we're facing?
Until the federal and provincial government comes on board with us and cuts us a big check, we have done some very innovative things in Peterborough to try and entice builders and developers to do the things they can. We've dropped the development charges for downtown. Certainly the development charges that we increased a couple of years ago, we phased them in as opposed to, hitting the developer with it up front. I just think that we have enough people that have the expertise here to facilitate building affordable housing in Peterborough here. We don't need any more meetings. We need our federal MP to bring a great big check here and say, here it is, and we can get on board. We've got enough know-how to do it. I think we've got some builders and developers that can do that kind of thing. But until we get that and a housing strategy, then we're euchred. We've tried what we can to do what we can, and we've had some developers buy into it. And certainly rent supplements and stuff like this are a big thing. But until we get that program federally and provincially, we're hamstrung really.
So the municipality has taken it about as far as it can, and right now it's kind of off to the provincial and federal governments to be able to step in and do something.
Yeah.
So then what can we do to pressure upper governments to deal with the problem.
Well, I think it's kind of sad that the Liberal government has had all these open houses and all this stuff about housing, and then said, we'll bring it in 2019. Well, that's if we get reelected, we'll do it. It needs to be done now. Mm-hmm. There has been enough meetings. There's been enough data collected, especially in this community. We know what the needs are. We just need the money to do it, so that we can attract builders and developers to do it. So.
Do you think the change in the provincial government might mean anything different for the housing market right now?
I don't think the Ford government is really going to touch that.
They're too busy slashing.
I mean, just today, with Christine Elliott saying, she had a meeting with the health people and saying, you're going to have to find, or the hospital administrators, you're going to have to find efficiencies in your hospital. Well, what does that tell you? They're already cash strapped right now, and certainly the hospitals are full, or relatively full, and the emergency departments anyways. So for them to say you're going to have to find efficiencies because they're telling them there's no money.
Yeah, so that's what we're facing right now. Yeah. Provincial and federal governments that seemingly, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to help out. But, especially for people who, and you mentioned rent supplements as one thing, for people who are in low income, what are some things that we might be able to do in the interim to be able to help out our lowest income and most vulnerable residents?
Well, I mean, certainly that guaranteed income thing that they canceled in Lindsay was, I was waiting to see what the results are there, and now it's been canceled. And certainly what happened in Dauphin, Manitoba, and certainly when they brought that program in, I was going to be interested in finding certainly what happened in Hamilton and certainly in Lindsay itself, if that was a way to go. That if you get people a guaranteed income, geared to income, they will spend the money, and certainly that's one of the impetus for driving the city forward when they have the cash to do it. Rent supplements are one way of doing things, but certainly you couldn't get into a scenario where you're chasing your tail, because the rents go up, rent supplement goes up, so you're just kind of chasing your tail all the time on that. But it's something that we had to do to keep people in their homes. Certainly I know young people, and certainly I've got 2 kids that would love to have a home, and they're looking as far afield as Havelock because they can't afford one in town. Well, yeah, but the banks now want $50,000 down. Where are these kids going to get $50,000 to put down on a home? And certainly the housing prices are gone, through the roof. So just a normal small home down in the south end or something that's a bungalow, between $300,000 and $350,000. So it's getting out of the reaches of the young people for being a starter home to ever own a home. So I think we have a crisis. We understand there's a crisis. It just we need that input of money from both the federal and provincial government.
Yeah, and I know I've heard a lot of talks from people, from municipalities in the area, from business people who are expecting that when the 407 extension is done, that's going to bring a wave of people who want to buy homes in the community, who want to bring their businesses here. But the issue being is that we don't have the homes, and we don't have the space, and we don't have the development lands for new business or for new homes, and we're not going to be able to take that opportunity when it comes.
Well, and there's we have 12,500 building lots, potential building lots. Yeah, I mean, they can, the realtors and the other developers can say, we don't have any shovel-ready building lots. Well, I can't force people like Aon to bring 5,200 building lots that are out in Cold Springs on, and that's up to them to develop that. But there is 12,500 potential building lots in the city of Peterborough. There's people that are holding on to this land, and if they don't want to bring them on board, it's the same as when we had the question about the annexation. I was not going to be supportive of paying $79 million for a bunch of swampland. I'm sorry. What we needed was we needed the airport, which we've invested $30 million in. We needed 100 acres of industrial land. But the Brooksfield subdivision out there, that was going to be $12 million touch to the taxpayers to bring sewer and water. Well, it takes a long time through development charges and taxes to get that money back. Brookfield wanted that development brought on, then pony up the money. and we'll find some way of splitting the costs and doing what we can. But that's a $12 million touch to the taxpayers to bring, like I said, sewer and water out there. And annexation will happen, or amalgamation, or wherever you want to call it. That land will happen, just not in this term until the new council takes over.
Okay. I want to transition away from housing to talk a little bit about transportation. Specifically, where do you stand right now on the Parkway?
I'm still against the Parkway. I think there's some misconception about the Parkway. Certainly the very first week of the first term that I was on council, we decided to stop the 3rd Avenue cutoff, which was at Sherbrooke Street and Clonsilla. And we were going to build the southern portion of the Parkway, or whatever you want to call it, that would have hooked up Clonsilla to Medical Drive. And then all of a sudden, in the subsequent weeks, somebody gets the bright idea that they can build a complete parkway. Well, that wasn't in the cards. The southern portion would have been built by now, but it's not. I think that we're into a scenario now where a ring road, certainly with the development in the Lily Lake subdivision with 3,700 homes and probably 7,200 cars or more, we need to have a ring road, which would be Tower Hill, Lily Lake Road, Atkinson Road, Brayley, all 4-laned, to move the traffic around there, as opposed to, because regardless of building the Parkway, Park Hill Road West has to be 4-laned, Fairburn Street has to be redone, Chemung Road has to be 5-laned. That is still doing, if you did the Parkway, all of those subsequent streets have to be done, or roads have to be done. And I think also people are in the misconception about exactly the cost. The cost of that is not $79 million. You might build a bridge for $79 million, but you're not probably looking now at between $120 and $150 million to build the Parkway. That would be the biggest construction project in the city of Peterborough. And then people are screaming now about what the deplorable shape the roads are in. Well, you would be unable to do any roads in the city of Peterborough, any roads, if you just did the Parkway. So these roads would sit there in this kind of state for the next 20 years, and you cannot have that. There's a lot of streets that need repair right now, and certainly I think that's where the money has to be.
Would a ring road, kind of going outside of the bulk of the roads and traffic in Peterborough, would that be helping with internal traffic, especially people who are trying to get from north and south through Peterborough, as a replacement for the Parkway?
Well, my daughter lived on Hilliard Street, and certainly I had to take her to Sanford Fleming, and just the route that I told you about, Tower Hill, Lily Lake, Atkinson Road, Brayley, to the front door of Sir Sanford Fleming took me 12 minutes. If I wanted to continue that, I could be probably at the front door of Costco taking that route in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I would have a cart in my hand. The proposed Parkway has 14 sets of lights on it. It's not what people think is like the Don Valley Parkway or something like this here. It's a street with 14 sets of lights on it. So it's all stop and go. Yeah, you build it, and people may use it for the first time, and then they're going to go back to the way they're going to find a path of least resistance.
Kind of reminds me of Lansdowne Street. How sure you can take Lansdowne Street to get from let's say the place where I get my tires changed over by the river all the way to Sir Sanford Fleming, but it's way faster to just take Clonsilla or go down the 115 or Highway 7.
Yeah.
Than to go down Lansdowne where all that traffic and all those lights are.
And you know what? I've had these conversations at the door on this election, and people have asked me where I was in the Parkway, and I says, well, you tell me. I put the question back to them. You tell me why you want the Parkway. And so after we have some dialogue and I tell them the facts, they say, well, I think you're right, and I will be voting for you. So this is the stand that I've had on the Parkway. I think that it's unfortunate that the council of that day in 2010 couldn't have got their act together, because we would have had the southern portion built by now.
Yeah, and I think that's another question too, is with the Ministry of the Environment's order that there has to be another individual environmental assessment done, just in regards to all of the requirements from the Ministry of the Environment, is there any way that we could ever build that southern portion without the rest of the parkways?
And see, that's the worst case scenario that could have happened there, because now the ministry says that anything you do is going to have an environmental assessment, which is really something I don't think any the city or the city staff envisioned that ever happening, and they just kind of put the hammer down on everything. So really, to do anything is we're kind of hamstrung now. I says, I guess you could go, and I don't know if somebody has gone from staff with the new government and asked for some sort of relief. I don't know if that's happened or not. But now you're into a scenario of having to do this complete environmental assessment.
Okay. So if the provincial government does come, and there has been a change in government, so there's a possibility that the mentality around that has changed. But if they come back and say, okay, you're allowed to do the southern portion, but anything more than that, then you'd have to do the full environmental assessment. Would you still be supportive of building that southern medical drive Clonsilla connection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other than that, the last issue that I wanted to discuss before we sign off for the day is PDI. Now, you were not in favor of the sale of PDI.
That's right.
Maybe you can explain why you made the decision not to sell.
Well, this is still a hot button item at the door, and people are still asking me and talking about the sale of PDI. Personally, I'm diametrically opposed to the privatization of our electrical system. First blush of I was thinking about selling PDI. I think the price was too low. There was no money given for the 37,000 or 37,000 users or customers, and I likened it to somebody, if you owned an insurance company, the chattels of the business might be a desk and a chair and stuff like this, or a filing cabinet, but really what you're selling is your book of customers. So we got nothing for the customers. They said that they sold the poles and the wire. But even if we've got $1,000 a customer, that would have been $37 million. So I would think the price would have been somewhere about $150 million. And again, the hydro canceled the buying of a piece of land for the hub. I was told a couple of weeks ago they were in with a tape measure measuring the floor space at the Ashburnham facility. I'm also told that the electrical metering for the city has to be changed to be compliant or to be with the Ontario Hydro. So that to do the water system, that was $10 million. So what's it going to cost? Who's going to pay for that? The employment. I have people phoning me right now that are working there. They're afraid or have been told they're going to lose their job. I mean, you have two centers in Markham, Ontario that does the billing and certainly the customer service. So those people that are working here will be offered a job, I guess. They're only given a 1-year window, and they may be offered a job in Markham, Ontario. So here is a person that probably spends 20 minutes going to work here in Peterborough. Well, they'll now be 3 or 4 hours on the road going to Markham if they want that job. So they could be a number of people losing their job. I think the only safe jobs that I know about would be the linesman, because they're a skill that Ontario Hydro needs. But again, that doesn't say that these people will stay in Peterborough and do that job. They could be asked to go to Bancroft or down to Coburg or whatever the Ontario Hydro needs them. So the whole thing, I'm not in favor of the sale. I think when you have a generation system, which we have, and we're still investing money in the generation side. The delivery agent for that is Peterborough Distribution Inc. So now you've sold it to a private company that's now traded on the stock market. It could be owned by some foreign entity that's delivering your electricity. The 1% decrease they said that we would have for 5 years, that equates to me for 28 cents a month. So at the end of the year, I could buy a cup of coffee at Tim Hortons. So what is that to me? What is 28 cents? That is absolutely nothing. And the COFI board asked in last November, applied to the OEB for an increase in our electrical rates. So therefore, are we going to get a 1% on the old rate or 1% on the new rate that brings it down? So everything is revenue neutral. You're not making any inroads at all. I'm hoping, and I'm running a petition on my website, www.keithriel.ca, that I would take that petition and send it off to the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, and I would be sending it to the Chairman of the Board of OAB for them, if we can make a case that there's an imposition to the people of Peterborough, like they did it with AREA. And AREA Power was turned down by the OEB because it was not in the best interests of the citizens of Peterborough. When you run a, when you get a 94% people saying, when we hired a consultant that said they do not want to sell PDI, who is listening to the constituents now? Who is listening to the people that are the owners of this here? This should have been a referendum item. I did not run in 2014 on the sale of PDI, and neither did any of my counterparts. They can make the argument that they're there to do a job. Yes, they are there to do a job, but they should be listening to their constituents. And 94% of the constituents in the city of Peterborough, who are the owners of PDI, are saying, do not sell PDI.
Now, lots of things are going to come up during a council term that aren't anticipated to have popped up during an election time. Is it a councillor's job to only say, I was elected to do this job because this is what I campaigned on, so therefore I'm going to vote this way? And things that pop up in the interim need to be left until the next election, or? Well,
I think what we started off with, 3/4 of our agenda item is by consent. So therefore, the council is saying we agree with the staff report and we agree with what's doing. There are some contentious issues, and they should have been brought up, I think, on a referendum, or the people should have weighed in on it. But what didn't happen? And we have a mindset of a bunch of people that are saying, if it's good for Peterborough, it's good for business. If it's good for business, it's good for Peterborough. Well, I'm not going to apologize for that, but I think on this issue, like PDI, the Parkway, and some of this here should have been a referendum item.
Okay.
The Parkway was a referendum before. Why wasn't it a referendum item this time?
So you have a petition right now for the Premier and the Ontario Energy Board that you're hoping would be able to stop the sale then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. www.keithriel.ca, and we've had a good response on it. Not as many names as we'd like, but certainly it's on my website. So we have, I think we're serving 400 or close to 500. So I will be sending that off and certainly see where it lands, or I may go and make a presentation to the OEB, which I'm allowed to do on behalf of the citizens of Peterborough, that this sale is not in the best interests of the citizens of Peterborough.
And how do you think that'll go, that process of trying to stop the sale?
Well, we'll see what happens.
All right. Keith, is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off for the day?
I just want people to get out and vote on the 22nd of October, and certainly I would like them to vote for me and re-elect me so that I can have another 4 years of doing the job of the city councillor for Ashburnham, and certainly trying to move the city forward. So on the 22nd of October, get out and vote.
Awesome, Keith. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And to everybody else, we will see you again soon.